I'm gonna give it to you eventually, but I just want to share some with you. Like, there's a group I mentioned on in social media called the SWAC Sports Central. It's on Facebook's Facebook group that I've laughed about before because it's full of petty fans talking petty trash to other SWAC schools. Yes, there's a few MEAC fans in there too, which is pretty hilarious. But
actually, right, because I'll get to that in just a moment. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's some MEAC fans in there the fact of the matter is, it touched upon a discussion we talked about a little bit last week. You know, with Dion picked up that kid, Travis Hunter. Apparently, he picked up another kid, a top wide receiver, committed to Jackson State, and he actually flipped a kid, not flipped, but a kid from Florida State that the defensive tackle is transferring to Jackson State as well. So he said, remember after he got the commitment from Travis Hunter, that he said more is coming. He and his coaches were like, more is coming, more of this is coming. And which led me to discuss with you about HBCUs, not just Jackson State, obviously, reinvesting in these programs. Not having to be like Clemson, not having to be like Alabama or Georgia. Just have enough resources not only to attract these kids, but to keep these kids. Because that's what it's going to boil down to. Can you keep these kids? Can they get to the next level from these institutions? Because once they can, and we've seen other kids do it. Obviously, Darius Leonard, he's one time the Rookie Defensive Player of the Year, got a huge contract extension. We've seen it happen. Javon Hargrave from South Carolina State. All these cats from South Carolina State, I want to tell you something, right? But also for South Carolina State, drafted in the third round by the Steelers, parlayed that to a good free agent contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. We've seen this before, right, in this day and age. But I think that I mentioned last week that I think the HBCU is on the verge of something, the precipice of something really special. With Eddie George being at Tennessee State, with now Hugh Jackson being in Grambling State, you know, and attracting more former players, of Black players, some of which Hall of Famers, we'll get to that in a moment, as well as former Black coaches, head coaches in the NFL, to coach the SWAC in particular. But there's this one, I mentioned SWAC Sports Central, one guy talked about, now, as far as funding, HBCUs funding their own programs, right? But he's like, he asked, we need to be concentration. He said this first. Some of you spend a significant amount of time talking about Power 5 programs. We need to be concentrating on why comparably sized and much newer FCS programs have surpassed or are surpassing FCS HBCU athletic programs. How many of our programs can consistently beat top 10 FCS programs? Good question. There's more. Some of these programs like Kennesaw State, I've heard of Kennesaw State. They were, I think, in the FCS playoffs this past year, on even 15 years old. Relatively new. Some of y'all are worried about why Black kids are choosing SEC programs, but ain't asking what draws a kid to Southeast Louisiana, which beat down FAMU in the playoffs, Jacksonville State, or Furman. They have a history that's not favorable to Black students, but that's another podcast for another time. Over in HBCU, what makes a kid from Florida choose South Dakota State over Bethune-Cookman, Florida A&M, Grambling, or Southern? And I thought that was a damn good question. So, I mean, I want to just discuss this right quick with you. You could take it whichever direction you want, because again, you're closer to this than I am. But it seems to me that we have the alumni support to do better in that regard. Because again, you got Kennesaw State, who's less than 15 years old, doing the damn thing in the FCS level. And good for them.
Yes.
Right? You got Southeast Louisiana doing it. You have Jacksonville State doing it. Hell, they beat Florida State this past year on a Hail Mary, but still, they beat them. And, you know, we already know about North Dakota State and South Dakota State, right? And the James Madison, even though James Madison's going to move up to FBS next season. So.
Yeah, we've even watched programs like James Madison,
yes,
Liberty,
Yes, Liberty. Yeah.
leave the FCS ranks and move up to the FBS ranks, especially as quickly as Liberty has done it. So
they got money, lots of money.
Yeah, right. And you talk about the alumni backing the respective institutions, and I think we've even touched on the fact of how alumni giving, especially at HBCUs within their athletics departments,
Right.
is not that great.
Right.
One of the differences, though, between HBCUs and other institutions, unfortunately, is the corporate giving as well, and the donations that they receive, especially if you look at the likes of like a Liberty, right? And the money, because I know all the money that they receive is not from alum. They get their money from elsewhere, but it's just a bunch of people.
Which anyway, right?
Exactly,
family.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get the places where you're capable of getting your money from, and being able to get money not just from your alums and completely resting on your alumni base. A&T's alumni base is a living alumni base is somewhere around 400,000, and asking for them to give the amount of money for them to have the type of resources that other institutions have would potentially be a stress on all of the alums in order to do so. So yeah, if they can go ahead and start generating money from elsewhere, especially from corporate donorships, it would be wonderful. So that's an avenue I know that they've been working on, but they need to go ahead and, well, I shouldn't say just they, because I know people love to use what Deion Sanders has been doing over the past year as an example, right? But we have to understand that Deion Sanders is an anomaly. I mean, on all levels, he's an anomaly.
Yeah.
There is not I don't care who you can think of. Well, how many people do you think within sports, right?
Yeah.
That can do what Deion Sanders is doing in terms of being capable of going to be a coach somewhere and recruit the way that he's capable of recruiting, and also generating corporate revenue the way that he's capable of doing it too, solely based upon who he is.
Affleck, Under Armour, both like he's in the Affleck commercial with the great Nick Saban. That tells you something right there. And Under Armour sponsors the athletics at the school too. So that's two big ones.
Yeah, right. And then he also has a situation where he attracted Pepsi to the SWAC. So he's an anomaly. There aren't many people on this planet, if anyone else, that can do what he does based upon who he is and the type of celebrity that he is, especially within the sport where he coaches, because of course he is a all-time great in that sport too.
Correct.
It is very difficult to replicate that anyplace else. And I find it funny when people try to say, hey, why don't they just do what Jackson did? Ain't no other Deion Sanderses. Let's be real. Eddie George, another all-pro, NFL all-pro. He ain't Deion Sanders.
No, Hugh Jackson, as well as reputation is as an offensive-minded coach, he ain't Deion Sanders. Bubba, what's his name?
Bubba McDowell, 11-year pro in the NFL.
A damn good player, but he ain't Deion.
He ain't Deion Sanders.
Right.
Tyrone Wheatley played great ball at the University of Michigan. 10-year vet in the NFL.
He ain't Deion.
Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Hell, you can name anybody. I don't care who else you name. Michael Strahan. He's close, but he ain't Deion.
Right.
He's close.
He's outfitting Texas Southern, his alma mater.
Yeah, he's outfit, but he doesn't have the based upon the stuff that I've heard him say, he doesn't have it in him to be a head coach.
Right.
Well, Jerry Rice, who is now starting to come out and say that he might want to get in.
I'm going to mention him. Yeah, I was going to mention him.
Which would be interesting, right? Because I've never heard him in his interest of wanting to be a coach before. But same thing as Eddie George, but I digress, right?
Yeah.
You want to go down that road?
He wants to reinvest. He wants to reinvest in athletic programs. He being Jerry Rice at Mississippi Valley State, his alma mater. He said that. He's been saying that for a long time, and now he's inspired to do so with Deion.
So what does he want to do? Does he want to be an assistant? Because I like Darby, Darcy, the head coach that they have down there now, the young guy. I love him. My hope is that they don't get starstruck and see Jerry Rice and it's like, let's go ahead and bring Jerry in. Word?
Yeah.
I mean, if you do that, I'll be hurt. I would.
I heard also that, and I've heard this on a couple of podcasts, HBCU Central podcasts, that Ed Reed, they like Grambling kicked the tires on Ed Reed.
Yeah.
And Ed Reed told them apparently no, which is why they got Hugh Jackson. Not that Tate said Hugh Jackson is like a bad consolation prize, but they were swinging for the fences apparently for Ed Reed, and apparently Ed Reed does have an interest in coaching.
And that's the thing, right? Ed actually has an interest in coaching.
Yeah.
God, and even as great as Ed was, Hall of Famer himself,
he ain't Deion.
He ain't Deion Sanders. He's
Marshall Faulk too. Marshall Faulk wants to coach in the SWAC. Apparently, he's interested in coaching a SWAC squad.
He ain't Deion Sanders.
He ain't Deion Sanders.
and let me go ahead and correct myself. It's Vincent Darcy, not Dancy. So it's Vincent Darcy.
Okay.
Did I get that wrong again? It's Dancy, I bet. Let me go ahead
and
make sure I get this right.
Get it right.
I know, right? Yes, it is Vincent Dancy. I'm sorry. I know I've been saying it wrong. I said it wrong several times. Please forgive me, SWAC fans in Mississippi Valley State. It's Vincent Dancy, most definitely. But yes, right? I know, right? They're like, oh, this man don't know nothing. He's talking about he cover, he don't cover. I'm sorry, it's Vincent Dancy, right? But I know one thing, he's a wonderful coach. I do know that. And I know he loves his players. And I know he wants to continue to develop that team and continue to get them better. And they're going to be dangerous next year with that sophomore QB and rising sophomore and that running back that they got. They're going to be dangerous next year. I do know that. But Ed Reed, who does have an interest in coaching, other players that I do know that also have interest in coaching, D'Angelo Hall is another pro football player, former pro football player that has an interest in coaching. But they aren't that celebrity that Deion Sanders is. They aren't. They're charismatic, in your face, smile, a 1,000-watt bright. They're not Deion. They aren't. And there's no way you can replicate
and it's not their fault. It's nothing wrong with those guys.
It's nothing wrong with those guys.
Great football minds. Hugh Jackson,
wonderful football mind.
Great offensive mind. Eddie George was a damn good NFL player. And legend in the state of Tennessee.
Yes.
Bud McDowell I remember him from the AFC Central days, the House of Pain. Yes. Damn good player. He was a Pro Bowl. I think it was made all pro. But they're not Deion Sanders.
They're not Deion Sanders. And it's extremely difficult to replicate that, right?
Right.
And I understand it's sexy to recruit these 4- and 5-star players, you know, and Channing Crowder, you and your apology, you can keep it. I'm gonna go. Let me go ahead and touch on that just a little bit too.
Yeah, because the Pivot podcast, which touched when Ryan Clark was making the same point, or actually, I should say we were making the same point that Ryan Clark and Fred Taylor were making in regards to you got these other coaches, Hugh Jacksons of the world, and Eddie George of the world, but they're not Deion Sanders. That was Ryan Clark's point, which was a great point. So I'm glad we touched on that. But go ahead.
I mean, even though we do kind of agree on the fact that we don't believe that Deion Sanders is going to be there long, and that's one thing we do agree on. But you know what? Yeah, Channing, you can still keep your apology, and I'm writing an article on that too as well. That's coming out soon. But yeah, you can't keep hoping to follow a blueprint that is a one-of-one.
Yeah. Celebrate
the head coaches that we currently have. Celebrate the fact that Bubba McDowell has been on that staff at Prairie View A&M for a while, knows that city, knows that institution, knows those players. They like playing for him. Celebrate that. The fact that some Bama asked, why didn't Prairie View A&M chase after the celebrity of the likes of a Deion Sanders so they can have a splash higher? Man, get out of here. Because you know what? Let me tell you who ain't a splash hire or wasn't a splash hire necessarily. That would be one Buddy Pugh.
Yeah.
Been in the league for 40 years. How did that splash hire of Buddy Pugh look against Deion Sanders in the Celebration Bowl? How did that work out, right? And
He's
to
a
my
damn
point,
good coach too. Buddy Pugh is
wonderful coach.
Hell of a coach.
One hell of
puts
a
up
coach.
puts up pros too. So
yes. And to your point of the guys who went pro, none of them were 5-star, 4-star athletes.
Correct.
They'll remind you they came up from the mud, bruh.
Mm-hmm.
And they were capable of turning around. When a lot of people doubted them, when a lot of people laughed at the fact that the Indianapolis Colts took Darius Leonard in the second round, they said that was too high. Was it though? Was it though? That man was paying dividends.
Yes,
that man was paying
defensive rookie player, rookie of the year rather.
Yes, and the quote,
it's not by accident.
Not by accident at all. And to quote Buddy Pugh, he said it before, and I'll repeat him again. The man said some wonderful things and some hilarious things at that too. But it ain't about where you start; it's about where you finish.
Right.
Even Deion said it. He said, "Dude, I'll take a 3-star that's a dog over a 5-star athlete any day."
Who's into the glitz and glam?
Develop that guy.
Yeah, who into the glitz and glam. That was his point to Channing. He's like, all those perks. If they're about that, fine, they could go there. But I want a kid, like you said, who's a dog, who wants to get there.
Of course, right? So, I mean, yes, it's wonderful. It's great talking points that we're capable of getting 4- and 5-star athletes. Again, congratulations, Deion Sanders, for another wonderful recruiting class that you started out with so far. I can't wait to see what happens come February to see.
They need more linemen. They need more linemen. They need more linemen.
They might not be done. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly what happens with that, right?
Yeah.
So they've had some wonderful pickups, and I know it's great fodder and great conversation, and it's great that the attention is coming. But you don't necessarily need them to win, and we've already seen that you don't need that to win. And the coaches have done it in the past with players that weren't 3, 4, and 5-star athletes that have gone on to win, that have gone on to be drafted into the NFL, and that have gone on to have lengthy careers, that have gone on to be Pro Bowlers, All Pros, and eventually Hall of Famers without being 5-star athletes. Hell, you don't believe me? Ask Alabama and that quarterback that they just faced at the University of Georgia. That was a former walk-on.
Yes, it's a walk-on.
A walk-on.
5'10" tall, by the way.
Played at a JUCO.
Yes.
He beat a 5-star QB over there at Alabama. You don't need to be a 5-star. It's wonderful to talk about. My thing is, when you produce, if you can go out there and produce, wonderful. But you don't have to be that. And if you have a head coach that can come in and a coaching staff that can develop these guys into that talent and have a winning team, have a winning organization, there you go. That's what you do. But to circle way back around and get back to your original point, right? I know I talked about a whole lot of stuff just then and went a whole lot of directions. I know I did. Just follow me. Hey, people's instinctive paths, I'm thinking about the Tribe Called Quest here. So just follow me on this instinctive path that we're going on here, right? So, to this whole point of not necessarily consistently following or chasing after these guys that are going after Power 5 schools, why not trying to attain these guys that are going to other FCS programs? And I thought the same thing. I understand there's certain guys that don't want to stay home. They want to get away from home because of the attraction of being at home might be too much of a distraction for them. I get that. But my God, they can't. You're telling me that another HBCU isn't capable of drawing these guys in and have them play for them instead of them not necessarily, because I kind of understand why they go to the likes of, say, a Montana State, a Montana, a North Dakota State, a South Dakota State, Sam Houston State. Those programs have been winning programs and they're competing for national championships. And I understand that the lure of competing for a national championship is one thing, right?
Right.
But going to a city that may be problematic for you as a person of color is very interesting. And I
Yeah,
really
Fargo,
hope
North Dakota. Look, I've never been to these places. Obviously, I would love to visit. I've been trying to convince my wife to get an RV, rent an RV, so we could travel across the country. That's a dream of mine. But she's like, I ain't trying to do all that. So, because I would love to see these seats. I would love to go to Fargo. I would love to go to play because I have a homeboy I used to work with at Deloitte right quick. He was a football player at Montana.
Okay.
Like in the 90s. So he played against Tony Romo in the playoffs and picked him off twice. That's the thing.
Okay.
But anyway, the point being is that he said, Scott, it's not many of us there.
No.
But it's what he said is some of the most beautiful parts of the country he's ever seen. He even encouraged me and another homeboy of ours to visit. So I'm just like, to that point, yeah. I mean, I haven't been to these places. I haven't been to South Dakota. I haven't been to most of the flyover states.
I
ain't even been to. I heard that Utah is one of the most prettiest, is the most beautiful state, arguably the most beautiful state in the United States. From a partner of mine who went to Central, to North Carolina Central. But yeah, to your point and to what this brother's point was on Facebook is how do we lose our kids? These kids from the South, deep South, Florida, kids from Mississippi, Alabama, Maryland, the Carolinas, Georgia. How are we losing our kids with HBCUs in their backyards to these institutions way in the middle of nowhere?
They're sold these pipe dreams. Well, I shouldn't call them a pipe dream. I shouldn't, right? Because I've never been to these institutions. Well, in most cases, just solely a visit.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's like to play in those programs. But I bet I could guess what it's like to play in them cities, though.
Right.
You know,
you belong in those cities, bro.
You know what I'm saying? You know, Huntington, West Virginia.
Yeah.
You know, you start talking about those Midwestern towns, those small Midwestern towns.
Fargo, Bismarck,
and
South Dakota.
You're talking about these guys from urban cities in some cases, or from deep southern cities that end up in places. You know, again, if you're built for that and you can handle it, bless you. Right. But I've heard from coaches, from college coaches, in various conferences that a lot of the guys that have decided to transfer from the institutions to come to an HBCU, where they said basically, you know what, that city won for me. You know, and it's always interesting that, you know, again, the influence of their parents, the influence of their head coaches, for them, the influence of people who are surrounding them, you know, maybe even teammates, for them to go to these places and for whatever reason, HBCUs have just been looked down upon since like the mid to late 80s up until now. Well, actually, we're starting to get a resurgence now, but it's still a process.
Well, George Floyd's murder in particular,
And it's still a process, and it's still not all of us yet, right? Until I start to see, again, Mississippi Valley states of the world start getting more talent. When I start hearing about D2 programs like Claflin start getting talent in basketball, when I started hearing about, say, like who else? Kentucky State start getting more talent. When I hear about Morgan State improving, when I hear about programs like that, when I hear about Delaware State adding more talent to that program, when I start hearing that, right? That's when I'll believe that this is working for everyone.
Correct.
Not just for a select few. Because right now it's just a select few and it's at small numbers. I want to start seeing it spread, and I want to see it continue to grow for all of our HBCUs. But I know it's not just the institutions having a hard time selling to these kids. We have to sell to the parents and to these head coaches and to the people who these student athletes are influenced by to make them want to stay and go to an HBCU as opposed to going to a program. Now, again, I don't, you know what? If you want to chase a championship, chase a championship. But if you're going to Kent State, now you ain't winning no title at Kent State.
No, again, free ride.
Games.
A free ride, yeah. Free ride, right? No more a free ride, but yeah, I know.
Louisiana Monroe.
Yeah.
You ain't winning no games in Louisiana Monroe. Let's be real, dog.
Yeah.
There's a litany of schools. The UConn football program recently. Do I want to keep going down the list of bad programs? I can, but I'm not going to sit here and insult a bunch of people like that. I'm not. I can though, but I won't. So there are a lot of places where kids are going because they're told one thing, and if they feel so they get a great education there, I don't fault them on that either. Because again, I always believe student over athlete any day, and that's the way that it's phrased anyway. Student athlete, right?
Student athlete, yeah.
Student first,
not athlete student. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Even though there's a lot of places where that's the case, and it is what it is. And in some cases, you're just an athlete that's a product of the state. But I digress. Yeah, if you're looking to major in something, I guarantee you there's an HBCU that has that major that you're looking for.
Yes.
Right? Now, are a lot of things comparable? Maybe not in terms of, because that was one of Channing Crowder's points in why Power 5 schools are better than HBCUs. And we all know that there's a huge money disparity, but there's also a money disparity. We are talking about
there's a reason for that.
Programs.
There's a reason for that money disparity.
Yes. There's a huge reason for that.
Yes.
But yet they also make more money than Group of 5 teams, and they also make more money than the FCS programs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still baffled on why they're choosing these other schools over the HBCUs. And whenever I can get a truthful answer, because everything that I just basically spewed out maybe based is based in facts, but at the same time it's still kind of rhetorical, because I don't know these kids and their decision on why they're making these choices. All I'm going off of is things that I've been told and things that I've seen, but I don't necessarily know is fully true from these kids. But I would love to see that talent stay with HBCUs, if not with the HBCUs that are near them where they're from, at least another HBCU that their parent can easily go and see them.
Well, you know what? They asked the question of Pivot Podcast. By the way, check out the Pivot Podcast. All those of you who haven't, Fred Taylor, Channing
Crowder, and Ryan Clark.
And Ryan Clark broke away from an I Am Athlete, which is another great podcast. So Pivot Podcast is a great podcast in and of itself. So please check them out on YouTube. Those brothers doing good things, great things.
Yeah.
But someone asked a question, I think it was Channing asked a question, like, do you see this in droves? And I agree with Brian Clark and Fred Taylor when they say no.
Yeah,
it won't happen right away.
I do too.
It won't happen right. It's realistic. It's not realistic to have all these flood of 4 and 5-star kids coming to these HBCUs. I think it's gonna be like Rome. It's not built in a day. Over time, when some of these kids, would it be the 3-star dogs who's not moved by the glitz and glam, or the 4 and 5 stars who want that challenge? But yeah, I think if they see that if Travis Hunter balls out under Deion and that's wide receiver that they picked up, I forget the young man's name. I think it's a 4-star. When they see them ball out at Jackson State and maybe Grambling, maybe Tennessee State under Eddie George, and Hugh Jackson, that Grambling, when they see them ball out, they're like, hey, you mean to tell me we can play well and get noticed as well? Because one thing what Shannon Sharp would always say, what a coach told me here is that Savannah State was about to transfer to the University of Miami, is that if you can play, they'll find you.
They'll find you.
They'll find you if you can play. Yeah. So we'll see. Again, Rome was built in the day. I'm happy to see the shift. I'm happy to see some of these coaches at these Power 5 schools get uncomfortable with the fact that some of these, not only HBCUs, but other smaller schools or on the FCS level, wherever, are taking advantage of using NIL to their advantage and lure some of these kids, these same kids. Because I don't know if you heard that some coaches, like I forget who specifically said, I think it was Kirby Smart and Nick Saban talked about there should be a cap on it. I'm like, are they really sure what Deion and company are doing? Would it be in the SWAC or other FCS programs? But still, I think it's sweet that they're taking that someone got smart and taking advantage of it. Because again, like I said last week, like we said last week, NIL is not is all it is pushing what's been done under the table above board.
Yeah.
That's all NIL is, as
Yeah.
far as like money and whatnot. But it's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited about it. I think about Buddy Pugh and company too, because he has an NFL pipeline as well. How that's going to affect colleges from all levels going forward. I think even eventually it's going to take a few more years. I think eventually it's going to even the playing field. I think we're going to see some parity over time due to NIL. I really think that's going to be the case. And I think a lot of these Power 5 coaches are shook as hell over it. So.
Especially the ones that don't have the resources to get NIL to be a benefit to them. Yeah, right. It's a possibility that they may be having a huge issue with that as of right now. But to the whole point, my thing is, okay, do you want to go to Vanderbilt and lose?
Yeah.
Or do you want to go to Tennessee State and have an opportunity to potentially compete for, you'll have, in my opinion, you'll have a better chance of competing for a conference title at Tennessee State than you would at Vanderbilt. You're trying to tell me that Vanderbilt was going to win? You're trying to tell me that Vanderbilt's going to win the SEC? Really, dog?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Let me ask you.
You can still be in Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville
still in Nashville.
Is a place to hang. Great place to hang on, Nashville. I'll give you that. Again, I'm gonna ask you this. I heard this asked on other podcasts. I'm asking you on here. Mentioned Deion Sanders earlier. We both kind of, in the back of our mind, don't think he's going to stick around for long if he continues to have this success.
I'll say this, right? It's just the way that collegiate athletics is now. It's very rare that you get a guy to stay anywhere past 5 years.
Right.
I don't unless you're at where you want to be and you're succeeding.
Yeah. That's
the only way you stay anywhere for a lengthy period of time. Deion may prove me wrong, but I just don't necessarily see that Jackson State is going to be a long-term situation.
I think the only place to leave for is Florida State. That's home. Even though they burned his jerseys, even though they still burn his jerseys over flipping of, again, a transfer of defensive tackle, starting defensive tackle at Florida State to go to Jackson State.
Yeah.
Which
they also had a defensive end transfer from FSU to Jackson State too.
There you go. So he's still burning his jersey as we speak. So let you know what they really think of Deion. But let me ask you this: even despite all that, say Mike Norvell shits the bed again.
Which is possible.
And I know they just gave him a token. I call it a token, but a small extension, another year or two. Do you think? I don't think Florida State can afford to pay Norvell and keep paying the brother who's before him to not coach them.
Oh, Jimbo, yeah.
Well, not Jimbo, but the one after Jimbo. The man from.
You got the Jimbo, yeah, that bad, yeah.
Yeah. So, despite all of that, do you think if Florida State comes knocking on Deion's door, do you think he leaves after? If say like again, Norvell shits the bed this season, do you think Deion leaves at the full calendar years at Jackson?
Man, if you're you are asking me. I'll say 70-30, yes. I'll say 70-30. Because of course the one thing everyone loves to bring up is the fact that he's not leaving his kids there at Jackson State. And we all know they can always transfer.
Correct.
We see Bama's transfer every day.
Yeah.
Really. The transfer portal is clogged up with guys that looking to make their exodus out. And I'm still trying to figure out why these guys haven't found a home yet anywhere.
Right.
Maybe they weren't as talented as they thought they were. Right. Or maybe they just can't find a fit for them. Either way, I just find it interesting that they can't seem to find a new home. But yeah, they can always transfer. But yeah, I just think I just have a gut feeling based upon, the fact that we talk about it is his alma mater. He is a Florida guy.
Yeah.
And my God, as many people that are celebrating Deion, there are a lot of detractors in the HBCU realm as well.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the Wild, man, he might get tired of hearing them too.
Yeah.
And he's like, I get an opportunity to go back to go back home, and I can take my kids back with me. Why not?
Right.
Do I want to see it happen? No, I don't. As as
Mm.
as,
I don't want to see it happen. I
as
hope he stays. I hope he will
as do
stay
I.
and build a power down
Hmm.
there. I hope that's
And
what I hope he does, but that's probably unlikely.
yeah, and I hope that the time in which he is here in Jackson, that other coaches and commissioners from HBCU programs are learning from what he's doing,
Yeah.
and adapting it to what they're doing if they see fit. But at
Right.
the same time, there are other coaches who have their own way that's working for them too. See Willie Simmons down in Florida A&M.
Correct.
They were 1 point away from being in the Celebration Bowl this year. Let's be real.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not like they struggling down there.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Same
they're
thing
good.
will be.
FAMU is going to be bananas next year. I mean, it's between them, Jackson. I think Gramblin's going to be better under Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
I it's going to be bananas. It's going to be bananas next year.
That Western Division is going to be insane next year.
Yeah.
But who else? And then of course, you got the schools in the MEAC with Trey Oliver, who had a young team who was 1 win away from winning the conference title this year. Delaware State, who was basically 8 points away 6 points, 9 points away in 3 different games from them winning their conference title. So these coaches, they have their ways, and whatever works for them to help them recruit to compete within their respective conferences. The thing is, though, there are a lot of fans who would love to see these teams compete better against out-of-conference opponents. In order to do that, of course, you're going to have to be capable of recruiting talent that's capable of competing against them. But let's be real, their focus within the MEAC and the SWAC is to win their respective conferences, play in the Celebration Bowl, and win the Celebration Bowl. Let that be your focus. Work on that, do that, and then if they decide they want to go ahead and open up for them to compete for national championships, then they're going to have to get ready. The fan bases and the institutions are going to have to be ready to not only recruit this talent or those talents, they're also going to have to be capable of retaining that talent.
Exactly.
So yeah, just again, the support of this, fans, and shout out to Brian Smith that actually asked that question in that SWAT group, who's actually an Aggie. That's why I laughed when you said that you got people in the SWAT group who aren't even SWAC alums, and Brian is one of them. Again, as much as we ask of our institutions to do, we as alums and as fans of these institutions are going to have to equally do as well, and do our best from our perspective, and then also do whatever we can to get corporate sponsorship too, to help these institutions generate the revenue so they can continue to attract talent to the